Tucked away here behind the barn are two of my favorite machines in the world. So we have a Lincoln SA250 and a Lincoln SA400. Now these are both big engine drive welders. They are both powered by Perkins diesels. But let's break it down to the individual story. So this is an SA250. It's got a 3-cylinder Perkins. I think its maximum output allegedly is 250. I think this goes a good bit higher, but anyway, I've had this machine for probably about 4 years now. My dad actually gave me this machine. He found it in a quarry local to us in Maryland. It was sitting behind their shop, and he asked about it and picked a good day. They wanted it gone, and that's how it ended up as ours. So he gave it to me. I think I've repaid him by now, welding plenty of his junk back together with it. It's been a fantastic machine. The only issue that I ever had with it was I had to pull the motor out of it once. It needed a rear main seal. And that was a real treat to get the motor and transmission, or motor and generator apart. But it wasn't too bad. This is a nice little 3-cylinder Perkins diesel. See it tucked away in there. This is a really nice machine. I have no idea how many hours it has. I probably don't want to know. This machine is a good runner. At least it was a year and a half ago when I put it away. It was tucked away in the barn for a while, but I got kicked out due to some hay equipment, it looks like. The only issue I remember this thing having was it didn't like auto idling anymore, which kind of stinks. That was always nice. I have put a fuel pump on it. I've done a few other minor things, but really nothing crazy. So I think this one should be drag it over to the shop, check the oil, check the fuel, and hot shot it, and we should be good to go. And really, that's the same case of the 400 over here. So this is a 400. You could tell how much bigger this thing is than the 250. These are monsters. And this isn't even the biggest one they made. They made all the way up to a 650, which I would love to get my hands on one day. This machine hasn't been around for as long. Probably 3 years, and that would make this one 5 years, I would guess. Anyway, I bought this the weekend of my 21st birthday. I'm getting ready to turn 24, so that's a good indicator. So about 3 years ago, this was all the way up in Buffalo, New York, or a little more north up by Niagara Falls. And I saw it for sale. Guy wanted $1,000 for this thing, running and working, which is a steal for a giant welder like this. So me and my friends, 3 of us, made the trip up from Pennsylvania all the way up to northern New York in the middle of the night in a snowstorm in my Power Stroke to go get this thing. And yeah, it's also been a fantastic welder. I actually haven't had to do anything mechanical to this other than service it and just generally take care of it. Now, this machine's lived a much harder life, I think. You can tell by the stoved-in hood. This thing is... They must have been using it as a wrecking ball at some point. Now, the story I got was it was used on a bridge building or a bridge repair crew. I guess that made for a hard life. It's also got quite a bit of rot, which is a shame. But it is a fantastic running little 4-cylinder Perkins. I wish I could remember the models of these Perkins there. I think this one's a D152, D3 152, so that would make this a D4.152. I'm a huge fan of these little Perkins. They just always seem to run. They start up in the cold. They're awesome. Now, this machine also does not have a hour gauge. This machine must be a older unit than my 250 because you actually run everything manually. There is no auto idle. So you run that all here. So you click that up. Right now we're in idle. Click that up to there. That's run. And you jam it back over here to shut her down. And your start button and everything are in here inside. Both cool machines. I think this one will go around front. I think you can run up to like 500 or 600 amps on this machine. Let's see here. Yeah, your maximum peaks out around 600, which obviously that's probably a 50% or lower duty cycle. It's still pretty cool. Actually, this is a 4.236 Perkins. I was wrong. All right. So that's enough blabbling. We don't have any power or anything over here, so I'm going to go ahead and find something to hook up to these, and we'll drag them over to the shop, do a good once over, and then see if they both fire up. It's only been sitting about 1.5 years, so I don't foresee any major issues. All right, we found a tow vehicle. Got it all hooked up. Let's drag it over to the shop and get it fired up. Pretty soft spot. Wouldn't want to get this thing muddy. We made the 200-foot journey safely. Oh, we got the jump pack hooked up here, and that battery is deader than a doornail. Hit it with 12 volts. I just checked the oil and the fuel. I want to check for coolant real quick. Oh, nice. There's a gigantic bee's nest in there. That'd be nice to find in the summertime. I could see some down in there, so we're good there. All right, with that, let's go ahead and see if she'll bump over. This does have a thermo start. If I remember right, that's some sort of grid heater. I'll hit that for a couple seconds. It is probably in the upper 30s today. Amp meter gauge still working. Oh yeah. Come on, sweetheart. Oh yeah. I was eating something. Like you shut it off yesterday. I love these old Perkins motors. Sweet. All right, we let it run for several minutes and warm up. I'm gonna go ahead and try and dig up my welding leads. I don't know where they are. And we'll see if this baby still welds, because running's only half the battle. All right, I think my leads might be out here on the old J truck. Let's see. It's behind door number 1. Well, there's the set of leads. Not the set I was looking for. All right, well, while we're out here and we're talking about welding equipment, this skid was built perfectly for my truck. Not this one, but my Ford. So I built this myself probably 2 years ago. It is the nearly exact width between my Ford toolboxes, and the idea was it has fork pockets back here, so you could lift it on and off with a skid steer or a forklift, so I could very quickly unload or load my welding equipment. So we had a job box full of all sorts of tools. My Hobart Champion 16. I've also had a Lincoln Ranger 9 in this machine's place. And a Bobcat. No, I never put a Bobcat. I did have a Bobcat, but I never put it here. So this is kind of your smaller welder compared to the big Lincolns. Then we had our torch. Our acetylene bottle used to stand up there vertically. And then we had a spot for a C25 bottle for running MIG and a oxygen bottle sideways. So this is and we had a lead reel right here. I really liked working off this thing. It was perfect for me because I don't have a dedicated welding truck, or I didn't at the time. And this made it a little more serious than just having it thrown on my flatbed and having to take it on and off all the time. While we got the tarp thrown off here, let's see if the old Hobart will fire up. I broke the, somebody, I don't think it was me, broke the start switch here. Machine's always taking a little while to prime up. Oh. Come on. You're almost there. Woo! There was something that had made a nest in there, and I feel bad for it now. Woo! Better warm up a little. There we go. Usually it runs a lot better than this, but it has sat for a year. And probably fallen ill to bad fuel. It's still blowing junk out of there. Jeez Louise. All right, we got it to run off choke, which is good. This thing's probably sat close to a year, so I'm really surprised that battery had enough juice. Oh well. This has been a fantastic little welder. It's got quite a funny story on it, but I think we'll tell that in a different episode. All right, well, after our successful side quest out to the Hobart, we did actually find the leads. They were in a shed. These are in rough shape, but let's get them back over. They should work for the day. All right, well, it's no secret. These leads are in really rough shape. Biggest problem right now is our eyelet had it ripped off. So we crushed it over there in the vise and got it opened back up, got the old chunks of copper out of there. Then we just stripped off a new section. So we need to go ahead and crimp that on. Well, we had to go old school. Smashed it with a hammer and then punched it in the center. Punched it in the center. That ain't going nowhere. Now, these leads are absolutely smoked. They came with the welder and they work fine for this kind of stuff around the farm. Just kind of screwing around, or they're great for running an air arc because you don't feel bad about destroying a set of leads. We should probably fix that too, huh? I'm gonna go ahead and do that, I guess. All right, with our leads all fixed up, let's go ahead and get this baby fired back up, which is going to need another jump start because that battery's toast. We'll do a little bit of practice welding with it and just run it through its paces. Now, we're only going to burn 1/8" 70/18, so that's not even going to put much of a load on this thing, but any welding's better than no welding. I was doing some earlier on it, off camera, just to make sure I still could, and we are good to go. Now, also, broke out the old sugar scoop. I painted this baby in college. It's color matched to my truck. I'm pretty cool. Felt like it was a fitting time to break that back out. Anyway, I'm going to set you guys up on the tripod and we'll burn some rod. All right, we padded a whole pass there. Not my best work, so we were using Lincoln Excalibur 70/18. That rod's been around for a while and unsealed, so we're gonna blame the little bits of porosity on that, and probably I'm out of practice with my starting. When you start a bead, that is a really easy time to get porosity like that. But I'm happy enough. The welder is definitely performing just fine. Any and all issues are my lack of practice for the last 1.5 years. All right, I think that's going to wrap us up on the old 250 here. So I think we're going to go ahead and take this back over and exchange it for the 400 and see what that old girl needs before we can do some welding with it as well. These are good old machines. Well, it took a lot of levering around because the jack on this one's doinked. And this thing's a big old machine. I'm out of breath. let's get it over to the shop. We got it hooked up. All right, we got the 400 pulled over here. We got to get a battery stabbed in this thing. As I said, cosmetically, this thing is in much worse shape than the 250. And sadly, someone went after it with spray paint on the inside and outside. I'm sure it used to look killer like this. I wish it was just still all this color, but oh well. But check out how big the welder head on this thing is. Here's my big hand for size. Thing's just a monster. I love this thing. And let's go dig up a battery. We'll check our oil. Looking pretty good, but we'll wipe it off, really check it, check all of our fluids, and then see if this thing will fire up. Hopefully as easy as the last two welders. All right, what are we thinking? Is this gonna start up as easy as the other one? I threw a random battery in, it's probably dead. Dead as a doornail. All right, let's try it now. Come on. Hit the thermostat once. I don't think it does anything on this machine, but we'll try anyway. Like I said, that's some sort of grid heater type dealio. We got all kinds of rust just falling out of the battery box. Yeah, so not as easy as the 250, that's for sure. Must have had some air in the line based on that white smoke. But now that it's actually running, it's clean as could be. So I won't complain about that at all. All right, same deal. At least this one we can let it sit here and idle. As I said yesterday, it only has a completely mechanical setup here. So we can set it right at idle. It can sit here all day if it wants. Cool. All right, let's let it warm up and then we'll see if it'll weld. All right. So this is how you set a Lincoln SAE 400. Now I'm no pro, so take this with a grain of salt. Over here we have our job selector. You have four big main food groups. You got your large electrodes, I would say 5/32 and above, maybe even bigger than that. Normal welding, 1/8" 70/18, probably gonna fall in here. Overhead and vertical, I also run this with 60/10 usually, but this will work great for vertical and overhead 70/18 as well. Special applications, extra low OCB. I personally have never really used that. I don't have anything that needs a low open circuit voltage. My understanding of that is that's just the voltage that this machine's sitting at right now without any draw on it. I don't see a need for that. Maybe if you're running a wire feeder, I don't know when you'd really want that. If you know, let me know down below. So, for 1/8" 70/18, which is what we're running, we're gonna be over here normal current, and I'm gonna leave it right in the center because we're only running 1/8". We're not asking a big demand out of this. Over here on your current control, this is kind of your fine adjustment. So you'll see we have three ranges here. You got your overhead vertical, lines up with that guy, which used to be red. You got your normal welding, which is what we're in, so we're going to be paying attention to the black scale. Then you have your large electrodes here. You can dial this baby all the way up to 600 amps, which is pretty sweet. But, like I said, we're going to stay down here in normal welding. We got a pretty long set of leads on it. We're going to run it probably at 150, and that'll be a little hot. But with these long leads and all the brakes in them and stuff, you kind of got to run it a little on the higher scale. So without further ado, let's get this thing throttled up again and see if it'll strike an arc. All right, well, yet again, absolutely no issues to report weld quality-wise out of the machine. A little bit of porosity still. I mean, that's really carrying up from the bottom passes. Once you have porosity in a pass, each layer up, it's going to keep coming up. Oh, hold on here. What do we got going on over here? We got a bunch of goop falling from somewhere. Coolant overflow, I guess. That's weird. It started as soon as I shut it off. Got all over this panel here. Well, that would explain why I was a little bit low. I wonder what that indicates. Anyway, let's go back to judging my welds. We'll think about that later. Machine-wise, the thing burns so freaking nice. It's funny to listen to it run 1/8 inch 7018 because it doesn't even bog it down remotely. Like the 250 bogs down a little bit, but if you were running a Bobcat 250 with an Onan or a Kohler gas motor, it's going to sound like you're shutting the machine off trying to run 1/8 inch 7018, where these things doesn't care. Could care less. So I'll take it. We got to figure out what's going on with that coolant, and then maybe we'll see about really putting this thing through its paces with some air arc. All right, well, I figured if we're going to air arc with the 400, we might as well air arc with a purpose. So that's why I drug this in here. Now this is a smooth bucket. It's probably 36 inches wide, I would say. It's off this little 35G here, my dad's machine. And it's in relatively rough shape. This one's been around for a while, I think. Today's plan is we are going to cut off this worn out cutting edge here. Now it's pretty, you can tell it's worn out because it should stick much further forward than this. Pretty worn down this way and it's getting thinner. So, we got a new one over here. This has a machined edge on it and it's just a whole new bar. So you can see how wide that is compared to what's left on here. So this is a relatively sizable project. We got to air arc all around this thing. And then on top of that, there are some gussets in here. They'll have to be air arced away and carefully to make sure we can get our new piece back in place. It's going to take some significant work. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing a little more ergonomically positioned, I think, and figure out a game plan, probably clean this thing up too. I probably should have power washed it off first. And then we'll get started. All right, we got our bucket weld all cleaned up there where we're gonna start air arcing. And let's real quickly talk about that because air arcing isn't a super common thing. Not everyone knows about it, only probably people who have done some heavy welding or been around it. So this is an air arc gun. Looks very similar to a stick welding stinger. The big difference is you have this button here. And what that button is an air valve. And it shoots air out of those little orifices there. So to power this, you have a high volume air hookup and then a lug to connect back to your welder. So in this case, we'll just clamp our stinger on there. So this uses the current from the welder and a high volume of air. You stick a carbon, because the technical term for this is carbon arc gouging. This is a carbon. It's looks very similar to a welding rod, extremely brittle. You can very easily break one of these. If I drop it, it'll break. So that'll clamp in there like a stick electrode, and you will use the side that your air orifices are on. And basically you take your carbon here and along a weld or a crack, anything you want to excavate out carefully, you just take it and you work your way across, and the current from the welder conjoined with the high volume of air will just take this stuff and blow it right out, in theory, and you're able to take away just what you want. Now these are relatively small. I don't know what diameter these are offhand. You could run these probably on like a 250 amp machine, just what I happen to have. You can have much bigger ones, square ones, triangle ones, for all different types of uses, but this is what we have today. So we're gonna go ahead and get the old Lincoln fired up again and start digging. It's taken me probably an hour and a half to 2 hours. You have all the backside cut out. And when you're air arcing, in a situation like this, you're looking for where a crack starts. So here's a really good example. See that crack all the way down the center? That means we hit the base of the weld, and this can just fall away now. So I don't want to go any further here. You can actually see where I'm getting into the base material. I'm trying to leave that be. Looking for the crack all the way along. So we might have to come back and do a little bit more on this side, but we're going to call it good and roll it over and start on the other side. All right, now we get the bucket all flipped over. We're going to start on the outside edge here, nip this away, and then get the gouging out on the inside here. A lot more weld on this side. Let that thing cool off for a second. things have progressed over here. Well, we got about half the cutting edge gone. So what ended up happening was I pretty much cut along down in here all the way through, and I was trying to get the whole cutting edge, bottom and all, to peel away cleanly. Now, obviously that didn't happen. What instead happened is we broke off 3 chunks of cutting edge. Now, look at that. That's your cutting edge material right there. And that's because it's actually a pretty brittle material. It's very hard because it's for abrasion resistance, but it's easy to break like that. And we saw that in real time. Just look at this. It's like, it almost looks like cast. Pretty cool. But that kind of screwed us because I really wanted this to just peel off in one piece, and that's not happening now. So now we have these 3 big chunks, our nice pieces where we could hammer on it. They're all broken off. But we're so close. Let's see if I can tip this thing up. You can see in here, I've got a wedge stuck in there, but we've got a nice crack running all along the backside. So I think we got to do a little bit more cleanup. What I think I'm going to do, I'm going to take the 7-inch grinder, start cleaning this up in here, which will only help us later when we go to weld. You can see there's still some weld in here. I might end up air arcing a little bit more, just kind of running it along here. I'll probably do that first, honestly. Get a majority of that, get a nice straight line for our weld to follow later, and then hopefully through that, we can find our edge like that and like here. And that way we can jam wedges down in there. We'll also have to scarf off all this junk under here. That'll all have to be air arced off. So we still got a long ways to go, but I can see light at the end of the tunnel. We just gotta change our plan a little. But the old 400, man, does it run good. Haven't had a squeak of issues. That coolant overflow situation yesterday, I think that was just because I had the radiator topped off too high. But it's just been humming along. Heck, that air arc doesn't even bog this thing down. I know that's a small air arc carbon. We're not running more than 220 amps or 250 amps, I think. So it really shouldn't be any work for it, and it's acting like it could take a lot more. So I can't be more happy for a machine that's sat for the last year and a half to be put right back into moderate service. All right, I'm going to get to grinding, and I'll check back in hopefully when this is cleaned up and we're ready to start sitting in that new edge. So I think through this whole project, I was a little low on my amperage, and I was definitely lacking on air power. You need a lot of CFM to run air arc, and I just didn't have that. So I guess we just need a bigger compressor. All right. We got it off of there. Not at all how I planned. Took way longer than I planned. I started shortly after lunch. It's now well past dinner time. Didn't go to plan at all. I was hoping to get this off in one big chunk. And what ended up happening is we broke off those 3 pieces in here. And yeah, then we lost all of our good like hammering spots. So then we had to get really surgical with the stuff back here and pry it out of there and all kinds of stuff, which is not how I wanted to do this. But you live and you learn. I will be better at it the next time I do it, that's for sure. So now we still have to go back and clean up all this gunk. So that's going to take some more air arcing, so we're not done with that for the night. So that's the plan. I'm going to try and get all the air arcing done for the night. And then I will pick you guys back up tomorrow morning after this is all cleaned up. And we will go ahead and set our new cutting edge on there. I left some marks here so I can measure to the back so we get it, remotely in the same spot. But it should be pretty easy with this old weld here as well as these little riblets. We'll just set it flush against there pretty much. But all right, I'm going to go ahead and air arc all the rest of this junk off, and I will see you guys in the morning when we go to slap our new one on. Went to go shut out the old 400 and we developed an issue. Oh, I see what happened. Oh, that's not a big problem. Okay. So I idled the machine down and I heard a crash. And I guess it was our oil bath air filter over here making a small environmental disaster. But that's not a big deal. We can top it off in the morning. Throw our cap back on. It must have just worked itself loose in the vibrations. I'll go ahead and wipe that generator off. Okay, cool. I thought we burst an oil line, or I thought something major had happened, but that's not a big deal at all. Cool. Well, I should probably clean that filter anyway. All right, now I'll see you guys in the morning. It's the next morning. We got our oil bath all filled up with fresh 1040. We got to pop that baby back on there, clamp it on tight, and we should be good to go. All right. We made some good progress so far this morning. So we got the cutting edge sitting on there. Still got to do a little trimming and finessing. You can see there's a big gap there. We'll knock down that leading edge, knock down these two gussets, and get it as close of a fit up as possible, as well as make it level. I don't know how we're going to figure that out yet, but it's going pretty good. So I'll go ahead and pull the cutting edge off. Show you what we're working with. This stuff over here I don't like. That's still carbon deposits down in there. We need to figure out how to get rid of that, and some old porosity from the old welds that were in there. That'll come up through our welds if we don't clean that up somehow or another. So maybe I'll grind in there and weld it out. I don't know. I'll figure that out. It's looking pretty good. So I'm gonna get this final cleanups done and then we'll tack it on there. So here I was tacking with 7018. I usually prefer to tack with 6010. It just restarts a lot better for short little welds like that, and a lot less of a chance of getting porosity in your tacks, which will then lead to porosity in your weld. All right, we got some bad news. I just checked every stash around here, and all we have is 3/32 7018. I don't have a lick of 1/8 inch anywhere on the property. Got plenty of 3/32. Got two 10-pound boxes of it. It'll work, it's just gonna take a lot longer. And yeah, oh well. It's a Sunday night. I'm pretty determined to get it done tonight, so I'm not gonna worry about waiting around to go run to the store. We'll just make it do. It'll take a little bit longer. Big rattly machine. All right, it's nighttime again. But we have the top side of the bucket done. At least I think so. So like I said, we only had this 3/32 around. I'm not a huge fan of 3/32. It's great for vertical and some things, but I much prefer 1/8 inch or 5/32, especially for something like this. So because of the rod size, we opted for 3 passes just to make sure we were good to go. So we have a slight convexity over the floor surface of the bucket. So I think we have an ample amount of weld in there. Now, not my best work by any means. We got a speck of porosity there from a bad arc start. A little bit of undercut there. But I think it'll work just fine for what we're doing. So I need to weld the ends over here. Throw a couple more passes in there, I think. And then I already did a single pass on the other side, but I'm going to go ahead and 3-pass that. And then we are going to call this thing finished. It's not getting too hot, which is nice too. I just finished welding on it. So we're jumping around. I think with these gussets in here, I think I would be fine if I just welded this thing straight across, but I am hopping around doing, one pass, triple pass, moving around as you should. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get it flipped over, and then we'll finish up the backside. For this long pass back here, it would have been really nice to use some dual shield or flux core. All right, we got it flipped over here so you can see we welded it out all the way across. We did leave little gaps. That's where we're going to weld new wave strips in. My dad's going to do that because I'm out of time before I need to travel back to Iowa. So I just left him little gaps here. You can throw them in so he doesn't have to grind away my weld or anything like that. Should turn out pretty good. So this is the third cutting edge for this bucket. Probably the last one it'll ever get. It's getting pretty thin in the back here, but it's kind of nice to $160 in a cutting edge, he said. And quite a few hours to do it, but that was mostly because I was out of practice with air arcing. And we brought some life back into something that was getting close to scrap, so that's always cool. So I'm happy with how this part of the project went. I was happy to get some stick welding time in so I don't completely forget it. And I was really happy with how my welders did. So my 400 here, my 250, and even my little Hobart fired up with little to no issues at all, which I'm really happy about. The 400 here, we probably put, I would venture to say 10 hours on it, and the only issue we had the whole time was the air filter housing falling off and spilling oil out. Now, I would like to put some more hours on my SA250, but with the wet conditions, I didn't want to go in and out of that field too many times. So that'll have to be next year's project, is put a few more hours on that and the Hobart too, which is also kind of landlocked with wetland. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up the video. Before I do, one final thing. I'm not really in the market right now, but in the future, I'm going to be hunting pretty hard. I want an SA, preferably a SAM 600 or 650. Now the SAMs are a little different. This is an SAE, so it's only got one, see that piece of aluminum right there? There's supposed to be a 110 DC outlet there. DC is important. You can only run specific grinders on both this and the 250, in case you guys didn't know that. You'll burn up an AC tool. So these are very limited in what they can do. They can just weld, air arc, run a little grinder. Well, they can run a big grinder too, but it's got to be DC hand tools. Now a SAM, on the other hand, I believe they are AC. They have a lot more outlets on them, and some of them even had a 220 outlet. But that's not so important. I don't really care if it's an SAE or a SAM, but I want a 600 or a 650. They're the biggest of the big. They'd be sweet. I don't want a gas one. I want a Detroit or a Perkins. Preferably a Detroit just for fun. So I will not be looking for running nice ones. I'll be looking for non-running, sitting in junkyard ones. That's kind of my price range for one of these, just because it would be strictly for fun. I just have always wanted to have the biggest of the big Lincolns. So if you ever come across one in the future, let me know. Until then, I will see you guys on the next video.